In this podcast, we want to talk about philosophy and
Bigfoot.
self-help and Bigfoot and whatever else we want to talk about.
We talk about all the things.
We came up with this topic last week, so in your contemplation inside yourself, did you come up with any answers or any ideas of what you think a man is?
Well, sure. I mean, obviously, everybody's got their own idea about what a man is. I think that. I mean, if we're talking about like an ideal looking, I always think of the 1950s magazine in the movies where they're like, "Oh, be a man today," and it has some cool dude wrestling an alligator on front of it or some random stuff like that. I think that if we were looking at it just from a, I don't know, I don't even know what to call it, just a very surface level point of view, it's somebody who acts tough and is responsible for a group of people. And
Yeah.
that's, like I said, it's a really surface level baseline type thing. I don't think that that has to be the end all be all definition.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think it's bad having that baseline of a man. A lot of people criticize, especially in this day and age, the traditional view of what a man is. You know, that guy wrestling the alligator, like you said, was on the tin. Um, you know, we look at that and yeah, that is a form of manliness. I think it's okay for us to accept that and realize that there is a portion of being a man that does demand a certain amount of ruggedness,
Right.
and I don't find anything wrong with that. I feel like in this day and age we're so afraid of offending people or making people feel uncomfortable if they don't fit a certain mold
Right.
that we just water down everything. But being a man doesn't have to be one dimensional.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's not just like, oh, I'm a father and I take care of my family and I fight wars and I beat up pedophiles. It's I mean, and that's obviously got some levity to it. There we go. I found the picture. But it's really like so many other things than that because being a dad obviously has way more than one dimension. Because it's not easy, but it's like the baseline, very bottom of the barrel um, responsibility to provide, and then beyond providing, you can also be a kind dad. You can also be, uh, supporting husband. You can also be a church leader. You can also, there's so many different aspects to being a dad, and beyond just like, oh yes, I keep my family safe and I give them money to live their life how they want to live.
Yeah, I think maybe taking a step back. So, what comes before being a man? Um, I think the obvious answer is a boy.
Yeah.
So, what is the transition that people go through, or can't? What are the different transitions that you can go through that take you from being a boy to a man?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess in your experience, what do you think are some of those pivotal moments that you're like, okay, that was something that made me more manly, or yeah.
Well, I think that I remember when my wife and I were first married, I would constantly like half tease, half complain to my wife about how she always went out to dinner with her friends and her family and stuff while I was at school or working or whatever.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh, well, you got to go out to dinner. Why can't I just go? Why don't we could just go out to eat right now?" And she trying to be responsible was like, "Well, we gotta can't just go out to eat whenever we feel like it, right?"
Yeah.
And one day she just got really mad and was like, "Dude, fine, go eat whatever the crap you want. I'm done with this. Stop making me feel bad about like going and having fun with my friends." And I'm like, man, I stopped for a second. I was like, wow, holy cow, I am being such a butt. I need to loosen up a little bit. And that was part of like the realization that I need to be supportive instead of be this whiny child to my wife, because it's supposed to be a relationship of two adults, not an additional
Mm.
child that she has to take care of. And luckily that was before we had kids, and so it was something that I was able to bring into our relationship as we got older a little bit. And we're only 8 years in so far, and it's there's been a lot of things that I've had to overcome with similar to that, where I've had to stop being such a child.
Yeah, I think it's a process. I mean, becoming a man's not just one day you wake up and you have that trial where your dad gives you a spear and sends you out into the wilderness and you got to kill a buffalo. And once you kill a buffalo, you become a man, or, you know,
Yeah.
that's, you know,
I mean, but
we read that in stories,
yeah.
but that hard transition, I think we have it in a lot of ways, but it's way different than what we realize. And it's more of a gradual process. Becoming a man's not a one and done, it's a continuous process.
Well, in a way, though, I think we're missing out on a lot of those rites of passage. Not that we need to send out our teenage boys to go kill a buffalo in the wilderness by themselves, but we do need to have them go through difficult things that we can reward later in life as they accomplish that goal. Um, I mean, you and I,
Yeah,
we had the
I definitely
experience of
agree.
like we get the Aaronic priesthood, and that's a big deal. We get baptized; it's a big deal, and they kind of treat it as a rite of passage of sorts. And I think that again we're missing that a little bit, because there's so many aimless young men out there because they don't think their parents like, good job, you did what's expected of you with high school, now move out of the house, see you later, hope you do well. And they still don't feel like a man, because guys are kind of dumb, let's be honest. Like, they really need somebody to be like, okay, you did a thing, and now
Yeah, right.
now you can you're a little bit more of a man now than you were before. And without those rites of passage, I don't think that it accurately transfers over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I do agree. I think some of those hard, I mean, they're not super hard transitions, but they're memorable moments in your childhood or your life that you remember, and you're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I got this, or I moved on to this. And in coming from a church setting like
Yeah.
we've had that advantage of moving through the process of the church and having what we know as the priesthood.
Right.
And not just that, but we were also heavily involved in scouts, and scouts is a continuous process of moving get those merit badge, get your weeblo, get your eagle. There's these things that you work towards, and once you get it past that milestone, like, you've accomplished this, you now join the ranks of X, Y, or Z.
So, I mean, in a big way, I think what we're trying to say is that being able to spend a little bit of time and reflect back on what we've accomplished so far allows us to actually see the growth.
Yeah.
I remember I didn't take a minute to do that when I was in school. It took me a little while. I came home from school. It had been like a year and a half. I was a good way into it, and I was doing a lot of studying, and I was kind of at the moment feeling like I really hadn't learned all that much over the last year and a half. And my I was trying to tell my wife what I had learned that day, because it was something that I did to try to help things stick a little bit more. And I was explaining like the things that I learned. I think it was about the kidneys or something, and I was going through these different physiological processes. And she's like, "Dude, I didn't understand a single word you just said." And I was like, oh, hey, neat. I've learned something. Because
Yeah.
before it, what that was never a problem.
Yeah.
It was it was just interesting that my wife had to like point it out that that I'd actually been learning quite a lot in that period of time, and I felt pretty good, and it was mostly just because I hadn't taken time to reflect on where I was and where I am now. But going back a little bit, what was something that you had that helped you kind of feel like, that you kind of recognized? Like, at what point did you recognize, like, oh, maybe I am like a dad, or maybe I am actually a man now?
Um, you know, I think there's two different parts. I do think having a family, everyone not everyone has the opportunity to have a family.
Right.
Um, but there's a lot of manly aspects of being a father. Like there's nothing else like having your son come and ask you just general questions about things. And I think part of being a man is trying to share your knowledge with other people, especially like a younger generation. You think about what your dad did for you with just simple things, whether it be fixing your bike, fixing a flat, working a car, or if your washer breaks down, your son comes in and asks you, "Oh, what you doing?" And, "Oh, can I help?" Little things like that. Um, at the moment, it might not seem like a big deal, but you you look back on it, on what you experienced with your dad, and usually it's those little moments that stick out to you.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of being manly. Being manly isn't just lifting heavy things or wrestling the alligator. I think we've told stories of what being in a fashion of what being a man is. You go back to the what is it, the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hero's journey. There's a time in our lives where all of us are in our small town or small place where we're just comfortable, and then there's something that calls us to action, and it could be small, be or it could be big. It could be having a kid, and there's going to be times where you feel like you're dying and you're not doing things right, and you fall into that despair. But then there's those moments of redemption and conquering
Yeah.
that obstacle, which is, there comes a time where you look at your son and or you look at someone that you've helped and you're like, I've done a good job and this is good. I feel good. And I think it's really that moment, one of those moments where I've just looked at my son, or I've come back from a mission or whatever it might be, and I've just felt that it's good. I, that good feeling is manliness.
Well, like you did something, you accomplished a thing that made a difference in somebody's life, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's something external. Being manly isn't like necessarily an internal thing. It's an external action that supports other people.
Well, I guess it could be said, and I could be blowing smoke here, but it could be said that there was an idea of manliness where, and this is actually really interesting because I was listening to a podcast about Plato and
Uh
Socrates, and um, how things worked for them. There used to be this idea of manliness in among that group of people. I think it's the Greeks, right? Were they Grecians? Plato and Socrates.
Yeah. Yep,
So
they were Greek.
so Plato and Socrates were among the Greek people, where manliness and was this like, oh, I need to have honor and or not honor, but I need to be glorious in battle, and I need to constantly put my life on the line to kill as many bad guys or kill as many people who consider themselves my enemy, and I need to prove to them how great I am. And if I'm going to die, I need to run away. That's what this is, so I can not die and I can kill more bad guys in the future. And there wasn't, like, for no particular reason were those things happening. It was just to pad your ego, right?
Yeah.
Whereas then Plato kind of turned it on its head and says, why? Like, what does that give you? And it kind of shows up in the story of Achilles, because Achilles was that big thing where he was following that kind of original Grecian thought process of what manliness and glory is, by killing as many of his enemies as he could. But then he refused to fight because they wouldn't. I don't remember exactly the story, but they wouldn't do something that he wanted them to do, and so he's like, nope, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to fight for my country or whatever, because you guys didn't do the thing that I wanted to do. And his best friend ended up dying, and he was
Yeah, I think
so
someone like
torn by
insulted
that.
him or something.
Yeah, right. It was something stupid.
Yeah,
He's like,
something
oh,
stupid.
my honor is so damaged because of you. His friend ended up dying, and he was so torn over that. And he says, I spent so much time thinking about my honor and what I wanted to fight for, and I lost my friend, somebody that I loved, and I can't ever get them back. And that's something that's worth fighting for, is friendship and family and the people that you're supposed to be protecting. So again, it goes back to that idea of external, affecting those around you by the deeds that you do, by the actions that you take to make the world a better place, make people's lives a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, we could just ask that simple question again. I mean, if someone is the most rugged person, they can live on their own, they can shoot a bullseye from a mile away, they can skin an animal, whatever it might be. If they do all that by themselves, I mean,
More
does
power to
anyone
you,
really
man.
care? Like, what? I mean, are they bettering anyone? I mean, that's a rugged person,
Right.
and I guess there is an aspect of manliness, but I wouldn't call that.
That's not the definition
It
of
wouldn't be a
man,
man
right?
that I would want to be around.
Sure.
It's like, oh, that's cool. That exists.
If that's
I go
like,
watch it on
yeah,
TV for a little while.
if that's their whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it makes sense, man. Like, I mean, and it's not to say that those skills aren't valuable,
Yeah.
and that's something that a lot of people will do with their sons, or will offer that as a way to, they'll train people to be able to do that for themselves, because it is a valuable skill. But if that's like the only basis of your manliness,
Well, there's a
then
why behind that. What you're saying, there's a why,
yeah,
They're teaching someone. If there's no why behind what you're doing, it's, for a lack of a better term, it's pissing in the wind.
right,
No one's going to care in the end.
no,
And I think part of being a man is externalizing and focusing on other people. And, lots of people might disagree, but if you disagree, what's the point of it anyways? I would ask that question, what's the point?
yeah.
If you're the only one that enjoys it.
Yeah, are you just doing it to? I mean, and again, like, that's still a pretty big generalization, because like some people do that to survive, and that's not like it's a bad thing. If they have that skill beforehand and they end up in a situation where they need it, then great. But if they're just learning to do that thing to look so cool, then yeah, I totally agree with that. That they are just kind of,
Well,
I'm trying to think. It's like,
let's use something more superficial.
Yeah, sure.
So when you go to the gym, there's a lot of guys that are super, super big and can lift super, super heavy things. but some of them, that's all they do with their life.
Yeah.
I mean, is that really a man?
Yeah, that's true.
I would question if that's a man. They can lift really heavy things. They could crush me with their thighs. Squish my little pumpkin head.
But what else are
But
they doing with their life outside of that, right?
yeah, I mean that is a lot of people's lives, and I think there's a fair critique, and I wouldn't call that a man.
Sure. Yeah, I was listening to another guy talk on the Tim Ferriss podcast. He said that I think it's like Jim Laird or something like that. He's a psychologist of sorts that helps athletes and high level people perform better. And
Mm-hmm.
he helped he's helped a bunch of people through that. Kind of finding like these really successful athletes who still are upset that their life isn't, they don't feel like their life is where it should be, even though they've won multiple gold medals and they've won multiple, they've become very rich and famous. They can't seem to figure out what makes them happy, and they keep thinking,
Yeah.
okay, I just need to win another time and that'll make me happy. Okay, I just need to win another time and that'll make me happy. And it just keeps going and going and doesn't actually ever produce anything. And he says a big chunk of that is because, although they have this big checklist of things they want to do and they accomplish those things, there's a hidden checklist that, for whatever reason, people hold themselves to, and that's like how they treat other people.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're treating other people like garbage, or if they're, they're not spending time with their family because they're always having to train all the time, then they end up feeling sad and depressed and unfulfilled. And I totally agree with that because, like we've been saying, I mean, we're saying the same thing over and over, which I
Mm-hmm.
think saying it in a different way is still helpful. But I think that the externalization of our skills and things like that, they cause us to actually be happy, and not just that superficial, I do this because I'm a big tough guy and I'd like to be big and strong for no reason other than to be big and strong. I think that it can be better, it can be greater if we share it with other people, if we do it for other people. Like, that's why I stay fit, or try to stay fit rather. I'm not the pinnacle of fitness by any means, but I try to exercise regularly because I know that in the end it'll be better for me and I'll be able to be there for my family longer, statistically speaking. I'll be able to have a good time with my kids because I won't run out of energy in 5 minutes of wrestling with them or running around at the beach with them or something like that.
Yeah, I think you hit on something right there. I think a man is just prepared in whatever facet to help other people. And
Mm-hmm.
it might not necessarily be physical. There's going to be people that are physically ill or whatever it might be, but they might be emotionally ready to help
Mm-hmm.
individuals. So I think that readiness to serve and help other people is a big part of manliness. So I guess with that said, what so becoming a man is obviously a process. It's not like a one and done. What's a way that you kind of find portions of your boy? Well, you don't want to give up the boy in you, but
Yeah.
a childish nature. What's a way that you kind of root out some of those childish nature, like you did with your wife?
Yeah. I mean, it's really just taking inventory pretty regularly and having a discussion with your spouse or whoever you're close with, or your parents, or somebody who sees you regularly interacting with things in life, and just saying, asking them like, what do you think I've done that I can do better, and what do you think um, I can do to be more present and helpful, or what can I do to be less annoying. It's and like my wife.
That's not happening to me,
I know,
as you
right?
could tell at the very beginning.
Well, but like I mean, I still annoy my wife, but I try to do it in a more playful manner. I'll
Yeah, I
constantly
need to work
mess
on
with
that.
her and things, but And she's like, no, stop it, and I can make it into a fun little thing, but it's just like I said, taking inventory. My wife does this really well, and I'm not as good as her at it, but she sits us down every 3 months or so and says, okay, what things are we improving on? How have we done on our goals since last time? What else
Hmm.
can we do to make things a little bit better in our lives? And I mean, a lot of times it's pretty easy to find a lot of different things if you really just take a few minutes and try not to have any interruptions. It's pretty easy to find out
Yeah.
ways that you can be less childish and more helpful. And speaking of which, I have got to go help my wife really quick. She's dealing with my daughter who's freaking out, so I will be back in 1 minute.
No.
All right, you still here?
Yep.
So no, I mean, case in point, like with adults, we really need to address our issues, and a lot of times it's really difficult to have somebody else tell us what we're doing wrong. And
Yeah, I'm really bad at that.
right, I mean, it
I'm pretty
sucks.
prideful.
Well, I mean, and I think if you're open to it and you ask people and they tell you, I feel like you're able to take that a lot better than if people just like, hey man, you suck at this, or
Yeah, that's true.
you make me mad because of this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we but at the same time though, if we look at if we're looking for something to change that because we want to be better, and we ask, say, hey, I mean, I'm really trying to improve myself. What's something that you've seen that I've been lacking on, right?
Yeah.
And then getting that input can be massively helpful, I think. Like my daughter, it's funny because with kids, I find a lot of times it's helpful to get their mind off of the thing they're mad about and distract them a little bit from it, so you can move past it and then address it later. Whereas a
Hmm.
lot of times as adults, I don't think that's as helpful because, um, we're really good at remembering things by adulthood, and we're really good at holding grudges. And so a
Yep.
lot of times it's better just to address the issue if you can. And if both people on both sides are willing to actually discuss it and realize that they could probably be wrong and that they likely are wrong, because it's not just that one party is wrong or one party is right. That's usually not the case. It's usually a mixture between the two. There's there's a little bit of wrongdoing on both sides, and we have to accept that both of us are wrong, and we need to accept that we're probably got a big portion of that on us.
Hmm.
And that's, I don't know, and long answer, short, just we need to take inventory, and we need to ask people, and we need to look at ourselves and figure out what's wrong.
Yeah, I would agree. Do you ever think that we could cross a line where we try to root out too much of our childishness? Could that do harm, or
I
it's
mean,
mostly positive?
it's like the whole thing that they talk about in church all the time is childish versus childlike. I think that having a
Gotcha. Makes sense.
childlike curiosity is great, but being childish when we try to learn things, like we don't take learning seriously,
Yeah.
then that's not helpful. And I think the same applies for life. Like if we're not, I mean, I still try to be as dorky and silly as I can because I think it's fun. I think it makes my life better if I'm a little bit silly about things and I don't just take things super seriously all the time. But at the same time, with my, for instance, with my job, I can't just be super silly all the time because people come in and they're hurting and they're really sick. And if I joke
You
with them,
have cancer, surprise! No, just kidding.
no, for real though, it's like,
You have a
hey,
broken leg. Ah, let me wiggle it.
how does that feel?
Uh,
Blah. And it's not helpful to do that in that instance.
no,
And
be
so
terrible.
you
I'm a
have to do,
terrible person for thinking that.
well, I mean, some people, I mean, genuinely though, I could probably do that to a cancer patient and they wouldn't,
They'd be like, whatever, I already know.
yeah, no, they'd be like, oh, I have cancer, and then they'd be stuck on that for
Yeah,
a long
yeah,
time,
that's
right? They're
true.
like, I have cancer. Oh, Oh crap! I have cancer.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
most of the time I'll talk to people about it, and they, um,
Just kind of zone out and go inside
yeah,
themselves.
they zone, and I'm like, hey, are you okay? Do you want to talk about this? How do you feel? I try to like get those
Yeah.
things out of them. It doesn't ever, almost ever, comes out during the visit. It's always later that
Yeah.
the gravity of that situation pushes down on them. So, anyways, yeah. I mean, we
Sorry.
just as in
Took
most,
us off on a random
no, that's what
tangent.
it's all about. But that's, I mean, that's really what life is trying to find that fine line, that balance between going too far and not going far enough.
Mhm.
And there's no way that you will know if you went too far or not far enough unless you do something. Like it just inevitably just takes action.
Yeah, and I think deep down inside you feel it, you know.
Yeah.
There's certain things that you did as a kid that weren't necessarily like childish,
Yeah.
that just brought you joy. I think those are the things that you need to keep, like joking around.
All right.
Like that's important.
Peeing in vans.
Um, yeah, so yeah, that's a story for another time.
Yeah,
Oh,
we'll talk about it.
grounded for a while, that's for sure.
I don't remember what happened really after it. I just remember my dad's face mostly. He was so mad.
Oh my gosh, I still remember your dad's face. I was like, holy crap, I gotta get out of here.
I'm pretty sure he just like, see, I gotta go home. I heard my mom
Well,
calling.
he sent me, he was like, Keaton, inside, Spencer, go home. I'm like, okay, I don't want to stay
All
here
right, bye. See
anyways.
you later.
All I remember is I think my parents were like wondering why I had to come home or something,
Yeah.
and I was like sitting on the couch, and they're like, what did you do? Like,
Moping.
I painted the bushes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
then
was a
they.
bad liar.
I'm pretty sure they called my dad and found out that we peed in his old van.
They always did. They would. Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh,
gosh.
the worst. Do you remember that little plastic cell phone that you used to
I
have?
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like always ask if I could borrow it. My parents always thought that I stole it, and then they would make me come to your house and give it to you, and I would stand there forever because I didn't want to apologize
Yeah, because
because
you
I
didn't
didn't steal
steal
the
it.
freaking phone. Finally, I'd be like, "I'm sorry, Keaton."
I
You're like,
know.
"It's okay." I'm like, "What the?"
Well, I remember I just like I feel like I was munching on an apple one time, and I was like, why?
You were eating
I
something
was
one
like,
time.
why did he bring this back already? Like I let him borrow it, and,
I know,
and of course I didn't have the sense to like say that.
right?
Just like just munching on an apple. Okay, cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, it felt like eternity, but it was probably like a minute that I was standing there. But
Cause what we were like 4, 5.
yeah, we were like 4 or 5. My parents thought I was a thief.
Yeah.
It's like I only stole like one thing in my whole life. Anyways,
No, I mean it's funny though, because I mean I think that's a big part of why kids have such a hard time with life in general is because they just don't think things through all the way. They
yeah,
don't think about, okay, how are other people going to perceive this? How is this action going to affect me directly? Like last night, my son went to bed, and I was like, okay, bud, time to go to bed. Lay him down, put his blanket on him, say goodnight, turn on his little audiobook that he listens to,
hmm
and like 5 minutes later, I hear him like walk out of his room, crying and whining and stuff. I'm like, what'd you do? He's like, I don't want to tell you. I was like, buddy, you gotta tell me so I know if you're really hurt or not. I gotta see what's going on. He's like, I did a somersault in my bed and I hit my back on the edge of it, and I was like, oh, and I had to try really hard not to laugh.
you're a better parent than I am. I'd totally laugh at my kid.
It was hard. It was difficult. And I was like, oh, yep, we can't do somersaults in bed, can we? He's like, no, it hurts so bad and my back hurts. I'm like, I know, buddy. Now it's time to go to bed for real this time. No more doing somersaults in the bed. Okay, Dad.
Well, it's better than what my kids did today. they went and got like a physical for school and all that
Oh,
stuff.
sure, yeah.
And in there now they ask like a bazillion questions about like home life and that kind of jazz.
Mhm.
Well, anyways, they were asking if they sleep in their own beds, and my wife told them that they don't necessarily, like, they'll end up crawling into our bed or whatever.
Oh, sure. The
And
doctors didn't like that, huh?
well, yeah, they didn't really care for it, but they like asked why. And he's like, "Oh, I'm scared." And Casey's brother just passed away recently,
Oh,
and
sure.
that was like his reason. But they're like, "Well, does your parents console you and make you feel better and stuff?" And my son's like, "No, my daddy says he doesn't care and sends me back to bed."
Oh
I
no.
was like, he makes me sound like the worst person in the whole world. But honestly, that's probably what sticks out to him. He doesn't remember all the times I'm like, "Okay, buddy, I'm sorry that you're afraid," and I go put him to bed, and he remembers the last time where I'm like, "I just don't care anymore. Just
Oh, it's like the seventh
lay down
time.
in bed."
Seventh time he's come in, and you're like, buddy, you've really got to stay in bed. I promise you'll be okay. It's like 3 o'clock in the
Right.
morning, and he's still.
Eventually, you're just at your wits' end, and then you say that, and that's all they
That's
remember.
all I remember.
I just thought it was funny,
Well, and
but
that also plays into the when we take time,
yeah,
um, with our kids, right? And we're changing a tire, or we're doing some project that our kids are interested in. It's really really easy to
to get
get
frustrated.
so frustrated because the job
Yeah,
itself is usually pretty frustrating, and then on top of that, the kids just trying to participate, and in participating,
right,
they're like sticking their grimy, greasy little fingers all over the everything and getting in your way, and you're like, just go my way.
right,
And it's really easy to just snap at them, and
right.
it's something that's not helpful in the end.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's part of becoming a man is recognizing those moments and just trying to do better because we're not going to be perfect.
No.
Some of us have kids and we experience that, others don't, but they might experience it at work or with other family members, and it's a process.
Yeah.
But I guess reflecting on our conversation, is there anything that I guess has been a moment that has stuck out to you
About
that
what we
you
said
might have
so far.
learned? Yeah, yeah, just in general before we
I mean,
wrap it up.
just what you barely said, about, like, we're not going to be perfect. Like, we can't expect to be perfect dads, and I mean, especially just because you don't know how your kid is going to be when they
Yeah,
when they come into the world. You just don't know what their mannerisms are going to be like. You don't know what their if they're going to be insane kids that can't hold still for 3 seconds, or if they're going to be super mellow. You can sit them on your lap and watch a movie with them without a problem. And so, like, you can't really prepare to be a dad, and so in that we have to adapt, and we have to remember that we're always learning, and we have to we can't help our kids understand that so much. I don't think that'd be effective, but I think that trying to make it up to your kids,
mm,
when you can, trying to tell them, like, hey buddy, I love you, and expressing that as often as you can, I think will be, um, in the end, as we're consistent with that, that'll be the thing that they remember over the stuff that we did when we were super tired and not thinking straight. And we told
right.
them that, get out of bed. I don't care. Just leave.
Yeah,
Just
I
get out
don't
of here.
care. Just go to bed.
Because we do care. It's just in that
Yeah,
moment we let that thing come out because we just did not think of the bigger picture of things. And
right. Yeah,
because I think I look at my dad right now, and my dad definitely wasn't a perfect dad. When he got upset with me when I was doing something stupid, he'd whack me on the head with his ring, and it would make me feel sad and cry and stuff.
I shouldn't laugh at that.
I know, but it's like, I mean,
But the reason why I'm laughing is I'm left-handed, and every once in a while, I'll do that to my son. I'm like, oh crap, I forgot that I have this on this hand.
I know it hurts.
I won't even like. I'll do it as like a friendly gesture, and my son will be like, ow!
I catch that myself. I'll like whack my, pat my son's head or something. It's like whack, whack, whack.
And I'm left-handed, so I do it freaking all the time. Anyways, continue.
No, but
Just
he
made me
would
laugh.
he would do stuff like that, and it would make me feel sad in the moment, and I would like, oh no, yeah. But in the
Right.
end, my dad has become like a super super loving, super supportive dad that I can always rely on, and he's always good to talk to about my problems, and I can go to him and I can get help, and it's awesome that and I didn't feel like I had that all throughout my life, but as he learned and as he got better about being a dad, um, I was able to have those awesome experiences with him. And so
Yeah.
I guess like I hope that I can, and I think the hope is for every dad, you want them to be better than you were at that time. And so I'm trying to see right now what I can do to be a better dad and to be more present, to just think like, okay, maybe I just need to chill out, take a deep breath, and enjoy this, fixing a bike tire with
Well,
my son,
yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
yeah, but that's kind of what I've taken away from it. Something that I really, really want to do, starting right now, is to be just a little bit better, be a little bit more patient, be a little bit more present when I'm doing things, because that way, I know that I'll be able to have more of a likelihood that my son will remember those positive and good things.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think what stuck out to me is when we were talking about a man is someone that's prepared.
Yeah.
Looking back at our scouting, there's the scout motto, which is it the scout motto or is it be prepared?
Do a good turn daily is the motto.
No,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah,
Do you know
do
how I remember
good
that?
turn to my dad
Yeah.
said something.
If
Yeah.
you do a good turn, if you're a gunfighter, you do
Yeah.
a good turn. If you do a bad turn, you drop the gun on your toe and you say "ma toe."
I forgot that. My
Dude,
dad
that's
always had stupid sayings.
20 years it's
Uh,
been in my brain.
oh, dads are great.
I love it.
Oh,
No, but be prepared is like the law, maybe.
yeah, the scout law, probably. But, it just has a deeper meaning now that I think about it. Just the idea of someone being ready in a time of need, whatever it might be. I feel like that's what a man is. And, someone that's also willing, like we talked earlier. People can do all kinds of crazy, amazing things, but they keep it to themselves. I
Yeah.
would, I wouldn't call that a man. I would call a man someone that is ready and prepared and serves and called upon. Uh,
Well, and you look at every hero, right? Whether it's in the movies, in a book, like if we look at the hero's journey, they start off pretty selfish and they move on to do something greater, not just for themselves but for other people. And that's what makes those stories remarkable, is because they didn't just stay in their comfortable place doing things for themselves, making themselves feel better. They helped themselves and others feel better, and in all, everybody benefited from it, not just them.
and ultimately, whether it's being masculine or feminine or a man or a woman, there needs to be a purpose behind it. Life has a purpose, especially if you're religious.
Right.
And what we've discussed is finding purpose. It's not one dimensional, not just one thing that you can do and all of a sudden that box is checked. It's multi-dimensional, but the key is finding that core or that base and then building on it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's not something that yeah, no, we have to have a firm foundation, right?
Well, I really actually super enjoy this conversation. Hope
Heck yeah.
some of the other guys join in. Uh, I find it few and far between where I can sit down and talk about. This is pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's been awesome, been really good. And let's just
Wrap it up.
wrap it up. Let's do it again.